Welcome to this video on a month of mindfulness, a short video series of monotangles in black and white, with the emphasis on the here and now with a pen. And today's tangle is another lineal tangle that I want to do called Inapod by Carol Ohl. I want to just first of all, before we move on to our tile, just exhibit something just to tell you a little bit about the no mistakes philosophy. Here I've got a beautiful green beaded necklace, and I just want to illustrate the point that all of these beads are different, all of them unique in their own little way, and although you may draw differently to somebody else, you may draw differently to me as we're following along, just like all of these beads, they're all different, but none of them are wrong. So just as you're drawing your Inapods today, if it doesn't look exactly like mine, don't worry. Just like the peas in a pod where it gets its name from, and like these beads on the necklace, they're all slightly different, and none of them are wrong. So as you gather today, maybe the tile that you're working with, or perhaps the next section on a bigger project, just find a little bit of space. And then I'm just going to pop in 3 little dots in a straight line. One at the top, one in the middle, sort of in the middle, one in the next middle, and one at the bottom. I think I've just said 3 dots. I actually meant 4. Just 4 dots going along the lineal stroke that we want to produce this tangle today. But in terms of lines, there's nothing straight about this one. I'm going to start at this top dot, and I'm just going to draw the S curve, loop it round, and go through my next dot. Loop it round to the right, and go through my next dot, and loop it round to join to my final dot. So I'm just doing that gentle curve. If you don't want to pop in and cross over at the dots, that's fine too. Just do it in a wiggly single stroke. And then again I'm going to do the same, this time going in the other direction. So I'm going to start at the first dot, go wide, and go through my second dot, go wide, go through my third dot, and join to my bottom. If you didn't find your dots from the first one, that's absolutely fine. Then I'm going to take my pen and do the same thing, but I'm going to follow that curve, but in a slight tethered aura line. So instead of going as wide as I did this time, I'm just going to go slightly further in. Cross through that same dot, go wide, but not as wide as previously, back through my dot, not as wide as previously, and back to my dot. I'm going to do the same thing again, this time on the opposite side, through my line, through my dot. Each time those lines are crossing the same spot. And then you have a couple of options here. You can either do the same thing again on the inside, again on the inside, again on the inside, but I do want to leave a little bit of space to work within. So either, if for example this one has a lot of space, I can do my last tethered aura on the inside. If you feel you haven't got a lot of space, you can always do your next tethered aura on the outside. Just whichever works for you, depending on the size and scale that you drew your first stroke. Remember, just like the beads, none of them are wrong. And then I'm going to fill the very center one with an orb right in the middle. One that reaches from one side to the other and back again. And I tend to do the center one first. And then, just like its namesake, peas in a pod, I'm going to try and see if I can squash as many peas in right beside each other. Although I do tend to overlap mine a little bit. So instead of doing a complete orb, I'll just have them just overlapping a little bit behind each other. I'll do the same on all of them. If you don't have room for drawing another orb in, don't try and squash it. Remember, just think of those peas in a pod. As the water swells the pod, the peas expand to fill the space. So you're just trying to expand to fill the space. And then to complete off this with a little bit of drama, just take your pen and just fill those in-between places where your little orb peas weren't taking up. There's always just a little bit of an inch of space that just didn't quite fill those beautiful orbs. All done. And then I like to finish this one off just inside with my pen, just taking a little hatching line, perhaps with a few dots round at the end of the line, just to give it a little bit more shade. You don't have to do that to all of them. Just a little bit to make it a little bit darker inside. I do tend to rotate mine round so I can do the same repetitive stroke on the other side. If you don't want to do this one, if yours are too small, your spaces, don't try and squeeze them in. Just don't pop them in. It's all fine. And then we want to add a little bit of shading. So I'll take my pencil and just where I have my busy lines, I'm just going to add a little bit of extra graphite just in those areas. Just put a little bit of graphite down just right in that busy pen area. And then you can gently take your tortillon out and pull it out into the centre. But I always like to leave a little white right in the middle of this length of tethered auras. Lovely expression of the same as peas in a pod, and yet most of the peas that I open in my pods are by no means all the same. And then I might just give it a little bit of a shadow underneath here, just on one side, just to give a little shadow. Maybe you'll find there's enough graphite on your tortillon already that you don't need to add any more with a pencil. Just a little bit of a shadow to just lift my pods off the paper. Of course, you don't have to do a shadow aura that's right beside. You might choose to give a little bit of an echo shadow, just lifting it up ever so slightly. I mentioned different ways of shading in my extendable guide. Just this little one here, it's got lots of different ways to do shading. So this is just one, just producing a little echo shadow on one side of the peas. However you do yours, I'll be delighted to see. I might carry on perhaps doing it round the edge of this tile as well, just because otherwise there would be a lot of white space within my tile. Or perhaps you might want to put another line of Inapod drawn behind. And then finally I like to add a little bit of shading to my orbs. So I think I'm going to do it this way up. And this is a way of shading orbs that I like to do. I like to just give my little orbs a little bit of a smile with my pencil. Just a gentle smile in the bottom of the orb. Then very gently with my tortillon, I'll just extend that smile round, perhaps do one loop over, but just making sure that the graphite doesn't go into the whole of the orb. But as I extend that smile, extend the graphite round, you can begin to make your little orbs look like pearls. Just by extending that lovely smile of graphite. I might just choose to do the same shading around the outside of an edge here, just to finish off this tile. Just a little bit of a decorative graphite shading aura here, just to gently pull a finish to the area behind my Inapod. And once I'm totally happy, I will actually pop on my mark. And today I'm actually just going to pop in my mark with my pencil, just to reflect that funny shading that I did today. Just slightly different to a normal shade. And so there we have a little lineal Inapod. Of course, you can do it completely differently. You can blossom Inapod by having them all come out of a centre point, or you can just draw one great big one. I don't know what happened to this pea pod, but perhaps it grew with lots of different pods of peas, or perhaps they're all just lining up. Remember, this is a tangle. You can have as much fun with it as you like. So, as we're thinking, just like those necklaces, just like those peas, they're not all the same, but they're all correct. And I hope you've had fun today with your peas in a pod. As we remember, we're all different, we're all unique, and your tangles will be too. Just accept them as they are and admire and enjoy.